Okay, so today I am with four excellent left-wing people for a nice casual hangout, a nice chance to talk to people that perhaps I don't often get to a chance to, certainly in my circles anyway. Today with me, I have the lovely Lapis, or effeminate degenerate, the great geek. Actually, I don't know what your Twitter at is presently. You changed it quite a bit.
It's some yeah. Right now, I am the resolution, New Year's resolution, revolution.
Exactly. The wonderful Wolf, Lonely Wolf, who certainly is not lonely tonight,
No.
and the amazing Amelia, who I don't think I've had on this channel before. So it's excellent to be seeing you on here for the first time, Amelia.
Yes, likewise.
So yeah, we're planning on just having a nice general casual chat. I've not done one this year, so it'll be nice to.
I was appalled that you were like playing because you did a gaming thing, and I was like, it was, what is it, Grand Theft Auto? And I was thinking, oh my god, that's so I can't do those sort of games. Like I do the little like Facebook type games that people play. The like, what was it called, Fish World, where you just like buying little fish for your aquarium and feeding them, and that's the extent. That's the extent of my edginess when it comes to gaming.
And I'm a true gamer. Captain.
Rise up.
But no, no, certainly I enjoy quite an array of games. So FIFA is my main sort of favorite. I'm quite a big fan of football. But no, GTA. I've got a cricket game that I quite enjoy. I'm not really a big fan of like modern releases, really. Aside from FIFA, it's more like old free games, basically. Like for Christmas, I treated myself to a game called Imperial Glory, which sounds just utterly like against all the sort of principles I have, because it's like it's an old strategy game that I got. That I used to play like at a friend's house like years and years ago. And essentially it's set in like Napoleonic Europe, and you get 5 European powers to choose from, and you got to take over the map. And it's actually quite fun. I really enjoy it because it's like you get like in-game camera battles with like armies, navy. You got to manage the country. Like you can choose whether to become a democracy or an autocracy. It's actually quite enjoyable.
Which one do you choose?
I actually chose democracy because you you improve your like neighboring trade relations and thus get more money. But I obviously played as Britain, but it didn't go very well. I mean, I took over like part of Northern Africa, but then got kicked out by the French. So no, I can't profess to be like any good at those sort of games, but it was a nice bit of nostalgia. What games, if any, do you the rest do you play?
Oh, I play Civilization 5, Crusader Kings 2, Stellaris. I really do love the Civilization series.
That's like, sorry, you continue.
Anything where you have a control of a nation or a country is kind of my cup of tea.
Yeah, like Sims on a wider scale.
I suppose you could say that, yeah.
It sounds a bit similar to the game I was just talking about. It's one where you like start them off as like early hominids, and they gradually evolve to like the biggest force on the planet and stuff, isn't it?
That sounds like Spore.
Oh well, I thought Spore was based on Civilization, though.
Oh yeah, I think it is. And oh, I suppose I kind of misunderstood what you said. Yes, I suppose that is kind of the point of Civilization. You start off with one city, and then you gradually grow to a vast empire.
Yeah, exactly. How about the rest of you? Geek, what games have you been playing?
What games have I been playing recently? My God. Oh, Smash Brothers, guys. My oldest brother. I live with my oldest brother, who's liberal, but cool for most things, except he doesn't understand anarchism. Found that out. And then my youngest brother, who I've talked about before, Trump voter, gaming getter, blah. But anyway, wait a minute. Why did I do that?
Why did you do that?
Oh, no, never mind. It's just something on my end. It's like Google Hangout thought it's like, oh, are you screen sharing? Well, this is what it'll look like. But I didn't screen share, I don't think. And
actually, no, it's Wolfie's screen sharing, but because you were speaking and
oh, so that's why I saw myself on the screen. So I was like, weird. I was like, what's going on here? But okay, so that's what's happening. Smash Bros is what I'm currently playing. Not much other than that. Well, I still have like a game save on like Sweet Home My Sexy Roommates, because yes, I am a yes, I do play the hentai, unfortunately. House Party is also something I played. That's also a porn game on Steam. Not much else. Been watching a lot of anime though. Like Hero's Mask on Netflix from Studio Pierrot. It's actually quite interesting. I've only saw the first 3 episodes of it. It's sci-fi with like near future and it's crime drama. So it's quite interesting. It's because like Christy Winters on Twitter has said, "Hey, Summer and a Geek, you have Netflix, don't you? Why don't you do a video on the top 10 anime on Netflix?" And I was like, okay. Wait a minute, I haven't seen all the anime on Netflix. Let me do that first, then make a video or something like that. So that's why
I'm... anime on Netflix?
What?
Have you seen anywhere near the anime on Netflix?
About half of them. So, and that's another suggestion that Christy Winter has made. I can do recommendations of anime on Netflix right now, and then watch all of them or all the ones I want to watch, and then go back and say, well, here's now the updated list. And especially since anime is always coming, it usually is coming out on Netflix. So, but Civilization 2 in the past, oh, I love that game. My whole family loved that game and stuff like that. And now that my political views have like changed drastically in the like last 2 years or something like that, I am interested in going back and like playing Civilization, and I wonder what kind of decisions I will make and stuff like that. But then again, when you're a leader in like Civilization or these kind of strategy games, Total War and stuff like that, you can't form an anarchist society or socialist society. You can't form a socialist society and a communist society. Stay communist and stay socialist societies, unfortunately, as it were, based on history. But you can't really form an anarchist society because you always need a leader as the player proxy in these games and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's quite interesting, but still fun for like all the battling and stuff like that. And plus, it's a fantasy, so you can be a total capitalist oligarchy, totalitarian dictator if you want to as well. And I will stop talking and let the others talk.
It's an interesting statement, actually, on just the topic of control and agency. Beyond the scope of the framework of the game. So, for instance, I heard Ian Danskin of Innuendo Studios, a very, very good channel. He mentioned that in a game of football, you don't touch the ball with your hands because it's against the rules, and it's the unwritten. You don't break rules in a game of football. You're competing along the game, in rules to be a good sportsman. In a game of FIFA on your console, you don't touch a ball with your hands because it's physically impossible. You can't. There's no option for your player characters, the medium for which you're playing the game, to stop and pick up the ball. And it's like you said in the Civilization, you can have these forms of government, or what the developers thought were these forms of government, I guess. But you can't then have the actual model for which you and many others view society through. GTA, in the stream I was doing, I was thinking, I'm making all this money, but outside of inputting what I actually want, what the game lets me, I couldn't say, develop my money into a new type of business. I couldn't become a legitimate business in GTA. I couldn't. You get like there's NPCs, which are homeless. You see homeless characters. You can't give money to them. Like there's no, despite the fact you've got like millions, you can't do anything for anyone but yourself really, or spend money on the form of the game. It's interesting things like that, which it just makes you think really. I think speaking of or continuing the games topic, the next person on my screen is Wolf, who was playing a game just a second ago. Do you want to tell us what you were playing?
I was just yeah, this is why I put it up, just so people could see that. Oh, hang on, I've got something unlocked. Okay, this is like my fish world. It's a very, very soft. It's a very mild-mannered. It's a game for the very mild-mannered people like me. I mean, I used to, in my adolescence, I used to enjoy the like the 90s kind of games like Streets of Rage or whatever, but now I just play it's like this is kind of a meditative thing. It's just because you sort of design it takes, like, you got to sort of it takes a lot of time to get as many decorations. It's just a matter of you know, growing your fish and then selling them, and then
sorry, I cut out for
and then doing like there's like daily challenges where you might have to like you go fishing to catch something, or like you play like slot machines or whatever to earn pearls. It's one of those. It's a very mild-mannered game. And then apart from that, I've got an addiction to there's some reality television that I watch, The Real Housewives, and I also have a big thing for soap operas. Probably the American, not so much the English ones like Coronation Street or the Australian, but the American soap operas are my like addiction.
I don't think I've seen many American soaps actually. Are they similar to the British ones? Just with obviously American voices.
Well, the American ones are much more over the top, like sort of mellow, like because with the ones like Coronation Street, most of the time they're just in the pub and they're like standing around speaking or whatever, and they might have a few things, but
well, you know, let me tell you, there's some interesting stuff that happens in the. Well, I say interesting.
Yeah,
there's some.
It's like dead
stuff.
Bodies and all that. Yeah, like sometimes there's a dead body that's underneath. It's always the same trope as whenever there's a construction work going on and they have to, you know, uncover the concrete. There's always going to be a dead body. But I think the American ones, they just go they go like further over the top with the evil. Because I love all the tropes: the evil twins, the baby switch.
And it's something I've noticed about American soap operas. Don't they usually tend to star the super rich, whereas British soap operas seem to concentrate on the lower classes?
Like EastEnders is set in the East End of London. Coronation Street is set in a working class terraced housing in Manchester. Emmerdale is actually set in like a country village, which is more of the upper class sort of centre. But going back to what Wolf was saying, some of the stuff that happens in those soaps, like the pub in Coronation Street is called Rover's Return Inn, but it's like on a street which has an old viaduct, which is obviously turned into like a train line. But in one of the episodes, the train like falls off the carriage and like smashes into some terraced housing, and there's also like a gas leak which causes like a big explosion, and they kill off 4 characters. And it's like, of course this all happens on this one street where like every other family has like a uncovered like murderer just lurking, or like every other family's got like an affair going on, and the characters who start out in the show as babies like end up growing up into characters who also go on to have affairs and like misdemeanors.
More babies.
Yeah, it's just nonsense. But and it wouldn't be so bad, but there's like weekly episodes, and not more than weekly, because there's like they do Coronation Street Omnibus, and it's like an anthology of like the week's episodes, and it's like you're just writing the same story over and over with pretty much the same characters. In fact, literally the same characters, because the show's been going for like 50 years, and they've still got some of the like original street members there. But yeah, it's a fascinating sort of world, really, because it's so predictable and obvious and cliche, but it's got a very loyal, very passionate following, and even sometimes I can sit and watch it sometimes because it's not atrocious.
My parents are addicted to that. They watch it every day. But they also watch The Bold and the Beautiful one, which is I'm not, because I'm more of a Days of Our Lives fan. But The Bold and the Beautiful, it's what's really weird about that one is it's almost a semi-incestuous. So it's almost like there's almost one family in there, and there's always this one the women, and they go through every member of the one family, like a father, and then the son, and then even their own son-in-laws. They end up,
And then the Holy Ghost.
somehow.
I'm raised Catholic, so it was like if you weren't going to do it, I was going to do it.
Yeah.
Incest was actually one of the subplots on one of the other shows too. There were two star-crossed lovers who later found out they were like cousins or something, because the parents hadn't told them about like the extramarital affair. So like they did, because of course the one person you fall for just happens to be the illegitimate offspring of your mother or whatever. It's like just absurd. Like, and then it's like it's known that they're biologically related for like months and months, but the families don't tell the kids because they're like, oh, should we tell them? Oh no, we couldn't break their hearts. And then they end up finding out, and it's like just so convoluted. And in all this talk of soaps, Amelia, we've forgotten to talk about your games.
Yeah.
What do you like playing?
I will share my screen here. I don't know how long it'll take to click up, but on the exact opposite end of the spectrum from the fish game on Facebook, I have been getting into Escape from Tarkov, hardcore FPS, almost milsim.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Fancy Call of Duty.
Yeah, I'm interested mechanically and historically in guns, so games like this just get me. You know, they've got me hooked. Like, you can take apart every single part of your guns. And you can mod them. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I was playing
me
for a while. I was playing multiple games at the same time. I was playing
that's probably how I do it too.
Yeah, I was playing IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad, which is a flight simulator, World War II flight simulator, but it's best played with friends, and it's just scheduling has made it not consistent. And I was also playing a lot of War Thunder, which is another World War II game, tanks and planes and stuff. But then I got this. Someone gifted me a 2-week like free trial of it, and before the trial was even over, I had bought the game because it's just it's exactly right for me. Yeah, I know that not everyone's into this whole like military type stuff, but it's like right in my wheelhouse because I'm a amateur military historian, and it's like my thing. So yeah, this has been taking up all my time.
I think everyone should have stuff they're interested in, and it shouldn't matter whether it's niche or not the most well heard of. But
you're talking to an anime fan, so don't worry about that.
I mean, if you saw the stuff that I watch, I mean, I think the UK is where I get most of my guilty pleasures. It's because I still watch all of those Simon Cowell.
No, Holy Wolf, we've been over this. You don't call it a guilty pleasure. You shouldn't feel guilty for anything you derive pleasure from. Instead, call them great trash. Because if we cannot enjoy great trash as well as great movies, we should not go to the movies whatsoever. But anyway, you continue.
But it's there's something because the same franchise, like let's say it's X Factor, like the same franchise, like in the other countries, it's very cheap and it's kind of watered down. But the UK, like the contestants they let in, like sometimes they bring in some interest. Like I really loved the last one because it was a very diverse place around the world. Like there were people from Jamaica, and then it sort of introduced people into that soccer sort of like dance hall type music, and I love that. I fell in love with that kind of music, that very exotic like Caribbean fused with electro techno or whatever. And the dude who won, he was from actually got a Jamaican winner from that show, whereas they wouldn't get that from like the ones from like Australia or whatever, or America. It's like it's not quite as they're not quite as experimental in genres.
Yeah, it's I mean, granted, the newer series of X Factor for me, like because I sort of watched it when I was younger, it feels like, I mean, it was always like quite fake, to use want of a better word.
It is
like overproduced, really cynical, very manufactured. but at the same time, that's sort of the appeal of it, and it's a bit like it's a. I mean, when you boil it down, it's a horrible show. It's
it's horrible.
A man like Simon Cowell who knows full well that these people are making fools of themselves, inviting him onto national television. His producers obviously, whittle out the ones that they think are going to be the most entertaining to watch. Sometimes even sabotage like their auditions somewhat. So like they had a few years ago, they were like auto-tuning people to sound better or worse, and it's like at this point it's not even really a singing competition. But it's at the same time it's oddly entertaining. Some of the ones who go on there and like are genuinely like maybe not so much the newer ones because it's sort of a bit self-aware. But for some of the ones back in the day who'd come on and start like screaming songs out to people and be just horrific, it is a little bit it's entertaining.
Yeah, the last 3 years, like the UK, it's like even though the show's trash, like the actual contestants themselves, they got like their own music collection, they got YouTube channels or whatever, and they end up releasing like independent releases, and it's like it kind of gives you, it's actually quality music. It's It's none of that, because I'm sick of that mayonnaise vanilla stuff that I hear. Like, I want the spicy chili sort of stuff, and you get that from the places anywhere near the Caribbean, Jamaica or whatever, where they do like the soccer music or dancehall. That's where you get the flavor.
Well, I suppose you could also find that sort of flavor in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I mean, also because I forgot what I was going to say now.
Well, I'll just interject while you're thinking about what you're trying to say. Yes, I am drinking, just in case we would talk politics, but I'll continue to drink as is right now. And to replenish my drink, I have my flask that, yes, looks like a Game Boy. Why is it not called Game Girl? Yeah, that's a fair question. But this is a Game Booze. Nintendo Game Booze. And what's in it?
Nerd-tendo.
Those puns.
Yes. And what is in it is gin. Because I'm going to prove to the internet it's possible to drink gin and not black out. Jeff Holiday, what's wrong with you? So anyway.
Oh yes, that Jeff Holiday character. I think he's in like...
It was cringy. It was
What happened?
I sort of he absolutely shit the bed when he went on Kevin Logan's stream and just ranted this incoherent. It was good for Kevin. I think it's a big score for Kevin because that may it might introduce him to a vast award, but maybe that's the opportunity for him to sort of engage with people or kind of maybe on the center or whatever.
Okay, so I will.
Oh, you go ahead, Geek.
Yeah. What happened is like last week or something like that. So Kevin Logan was planning and scheduled to do a stream with Kraut and T to settle the beef. It was Kraut wanted to do the stream. Okay, so yes, we can settle the beef that they have with Kevin Logan about like the Discord server or something like that. That drama that Kevin and Christy covered a lot on their show, the Kevin and Christy Happy Hour, which I am a mod of, and I'm friends with them, and I'm a mod for their Facebook group as well. So. And but Kraut and T basically was only on for like 9 minutes. First of all, they planned for like the schedule to be one time, and then Kraut said to Kevin, "Let's have this 13 hours earlier," or something like that. If I remember correctly, they talked this on this stream, and Kraut was only there for like 9 minutes. Didn't want to settle the beef, and then gave the hangout to Jeff Holiday, who then came on and. He was drunk during that whole thing as well, and Kevin and Jeff went on for like 45 minutes because Jeff was accusing Kevin Logan of being the worst person ever for going on the Ralph Record Kill stream or something like that, and he was not making good arguments. He was drunk. He was belligerent. He was talking. Since Jeff Holiday make fun of like Kevin Logan's sex life in a way. Kevin Logan brought up how Jeff Holiday's wife, Memory Holiday, mentioned something on Twitter about like going out with other women or something like that. And so then Kevin Logan brought up that. And while Jeff was combating that, being very vulgar, his kid was in the background. His 7-year-old kid was in the background hearing all this and hearing Jeff Holiday person as well. So it was a
best way to describe father.
Yeah, it basically was like a kind of a shit show. But then Kristen and Kevin did like a 4-hour stream afterwards, just like going through all of the bits and basically laughing at Jeff Holiday, who later the next day basically said on like Twitter, "I'm not drinking ever again. I never blacked out since high school, and that's the last time I'm doing that." And so
he would have. I mean, he would have had a big meltdown, regardless of what happened, because obviously, because people have falling outs all the time. I mean, I sort of like I had a little bit of a falling out with the Windows group, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to hold on to bitterness. Like I'll still go onto her like channels and I like her videos, and then like I interact with her on YouTube, and it's when you hold on to such resentment for such a long time, and to actually say that these two, like Kevin and Christy, are the worst people in the world. They're worse than Nazis.
They're worse than neo-Nazis. That's what Jeff Holiday said. So yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It seems
really
like No, you go ahead, Lapis.
Oh, well, thank you, Owen. I have to admit, I'm a tad tired of the drama between annoying anti-SJW, centrist YouTube, Christie's little faction, other leftists. It's just a bit of a distraction, I think, from the main focus, which is, I think, the alt-right. It seems like people really need to get their priorities straight. Like, are we going to bother canceling people because of their associations? Or are we going to actually combat these, dangerous ideas which are already leading to, death and displacement all over the world?
And to be fair, like Kevin Logan does, he in fact like mentioned this, like, okay, I did a PragerU FU video countering all the arguments from one PragerU video. I sourced it, I researched it, I put a lot of effort to it, and it gets only like 500 views. Yet that little tiny video of like the compilation of all the Jeff moments from the Jeff stream and the Jeff stream itself get thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And so, yeah, but to your point, yeah, I do kind of like agree that like, and sometimes you can like place your efforts better in like other places and stuff like that. But it also is kind of like I'm an anarchist, so I can't really tell anyone else what to do. So I'll try to avoid like the policing as well as like can be out there.
I mean, I said this to like as an opinion. I just said the only thing that I disagree with is I understand it'd be frustrating to be always called all these names, calling you a cuck, a soy boy, like beta male, and the word cuck, and it was I think that was like I didn't agree with when it came to sort of Jeff Holiday to sort of come back and use those same sort of words. Like I've never agreed with those particular words. I just said like attack him any other way. You can call him the C word or whatever, but it was just the I just said I don't really agree with you sort of going down, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much you're being baited.
And don't forget that sorry.
Oh, the NPC meme is what I think.
Oh, the NPC.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a fail. I mean, it's like throwing a grenade, but it's halfway between you and your target, so you both get blown up in the process.
Oh my god!
The meme. It comes across like the sort of thing that's like scrawled onto a bit of paper that you just like see lying around. It's like, oh, let's think of something we can just scribble out in like 10 seconds. Oh, here we go, NPC. You're the same as computer characters that don't have lives or whatever. Like
the worst part about it is that the way that they had to post it, because the inherent way that memes work made them look like NPCs, because they were all posting the exact same meme in the exact same way, exact same wording. So they're like, you just see like 100 people say exact same phrase. Oh, you're just an NPC, just like over and over again. You're like, do you guys not see yourselves? Because
like how many times? I mean, I've read 1,000 times the same comment over and over again. I identify as an attack helicopter. Feminism is cancer. Cuck.
Or like for socialist, people's money. That one, like,
It's I think it's quite a common trend with quite a lot of right-wing groups, really, in that the things they say about other people is largely a lot of the time a projection of their own insecurities and ideas. So, for instance, you look at the amount of nonsense that's spoken about with socialism, where it's like, oh, under socialism, you're all going to be living lives of dour misery. You're gonna, you're not gonna have a control of your life. You're gonna be working and living in little square boxes. Yeah, you're gonna be own nothing. And then you look at capitalist society, where landlords can just hoover up the entire property market of an entire city, where factories are these grim sweat boxes designed to squeeze as much profit out of each worker's day-to-day livelihood.
But it could be worse. You could be living in this country. You could be living in this country.
What about Venezuela?
Yeah, socialism works because they are lining up for bread lines and stuff like that. Oh God.
Yeah. Interestingly, like you speak to them and say, Venezuela is not a socialist country. It's not worker owned by no means. It's got a private sector. It's quite under any scrutiny. Just doesn't fit. And then it's like, oh well, actually they tried socialism and it just went bad. And it's like, well, firstly they didn't, and secondly, that's not what you said a second ago. You just changed your argument. And just it's so blatantly dishonest and disingenuous. And it just sort of I've got a real cynicism about the majority of the people making these arguments, because they're either really misinformed, which is not exactly hard to believe given the amount of indoctrination that lots of people sort of receive, or completely deceitful, which is also not hard to believe, because anyone who sort of looks at the state of a lot of conservative discourse sees it for what it is. Garbage trite. Go ahead, Lapis.
I think about the deceit, I'm not necessarily sure how intentional it is among the the laymen, but among the the kind of the thought leaders, your Candace Owens, your Charlie Kirks, I think it is very intentional. We see Charlie Kirk, uttering pretty much, he's basically supporting Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Not basically,
he is. He's giving a whole bunch of apologisms and saying, oh, he's so great. He's like the Trump of the tropics, which makes Trump look extremely bad, because Bolsonaro, he straight up says, I wish Pinochet had killed more people. The only problem, the only failure of the military regime was torturing and not killing. These are real quotes. You can look them up. He says these evil things, and he pretty much he's admitted before that he wants to make himself a dictator. But it doesn't matter really, because Bolsonaro also wants to liberalize the economy, and that will increase the profits that are of the people who are paying Charlie Kirk.
But I live like a capitalist every day. Cenk.
It's, I think, why so much of the conversation needs to shift to talking about them rather than to them. We should see them as imagine you're studying life in a little petri dish. You should be observing it. You shouldn't be sort of treating it like the debate partner, an equal in the field of discourse. But rather a product of the capitalist system. Commodifying everything in sight. Bolsonaro, he's this awful man who, it makes no sense to defend him unless you're in the pretty common position of wanting to accrue more capital. And so suddenly the completely completely abysmal nature that Bolsonaro has, whether it's the deregulation, the destruction of the environment, the rampant anti-LGBTQ, and racism, militarism, all those things, they're good for business. The shareholders of corporations that benefits from those things, like deforestation, like military contractors, they're going to have more money. And under capitalism, why would you not then support them? And like you said, Lapis, Charlie Kirk, who's funded by people explicitly, benefiting from this, is always going to put out just anything he types. It's obviously the deceit is there. I think also, though, deceit is not just limited to the big leaders. There's also people who benefit from deceit because it's a self-fulfilling statement about themselves. It's a self-fulfilling lie. They get to pretend they're in the right if they willingly ignore the logic in the argument. It's like people who tell themselves like, oh, the gays are doing X, Y, Z. The gays are doing this. There's no evidence for any of that. There's no basis for saying that. But if you start to look at the evidence and start to consider actual reason, then suddenly the entire life you've been living of hatred and blind like conservatism and stuff just sort of falls apart. What basis do you have for it? What kind of person have you been? So the necessary response and pathway becomes one of just doubling down on anything, insisting you're right regardless of what's actually the truth. It's why you still see the same people saying, oh, the gay lifestyle is decaying our values, or whatever nonsense they've rephrased it to this week. It's
the gay agenda.
Yeah, and just substitute gay for whatever marginalized group you're trying to get rid of this time. Like
transgender ideology.
Yeah, because I always challenge people from the ones who sort of that they've got a very simplistic model of biological sex. They might have passed like that, but then like from a mathematical viewpoint, you just ask them, if you were given this data and you didn't know what it was, would you put it into 2 boxes? It's like a histogram bin with only 2 categories, and it's like the answer would be no, because some of the variables are continuous, so they'll be mapped on a like normal distribution. Like some of them might have like different categories or whatever. Like there's some that might have only like 1 or 2, that's fine, but because of the number of variables, and some of them are continuous, so therefore it's like if you were any reasonable person who's done a first-year course in data analysis, like would treat that data very differently. Like if they didn't know what it was. Like that's the argument that I always put forward from a because for me the science is a little bit edgy. Like even though I identify as NB, like it's like science is not really my. I argue more from a cultural point of view that it's that it's kind of a universal cultural trait that there's a sort of gender ambiguity, and it's sort of evident throughout sort of history that there's been that androgyny is sort of a natural part of culture. Like even if it's evolutionary, even though evolutionary like is sort of like asexual as well, like that's taken me out of the gene pool, but there's still and that's what a lot of people need to think, that because we have like sort of dissident sexualities no matter what they are, and people might have the argument saying, well, it's against, evolution. It's sort of, you're not contributing to the gene pool, but at the same time, like what we have to remember is there's a cultural contribution that comes from, that sort of dissidence.
I think without wanting to sound arrogant, I see it as something that's not very hard to understand when you give it like a few minutes of thought, if that makes sense. So the idea that science is being like thwarted is almost the complete opposite of what's actually happening, where we've got biological studies of the body which show reproduction and just different components of sexuality and just the body itself, but then suddenly you're like, oh, this is male, this is female, and you've just sort of lumped together everything into these 2 like ridiculous boxes which which aren't consistent within themselves, which ignore the evolution of science and on our understanding, and they are actively just sort of sabotaging the improvement of the understanding of the body just to continue like doing it, to the point where you get people like the Nazis who just burn down the evidence because they just outright refuse to have any deviance from their ridiculous mindset.
I mean, even when they use the chromosome sort of things, like it's not only because I only had a brief look at an article or something like that. Like basically it's they're obviously chromosomes have got a certain like there's a predictive characteristic of what will happen if you've got this chromosome, but then within the cells there's also other genes that are like apart from the XY chromosomes that that contribute towards secondary sex characteristics. Like it's something that they're still trying to map out.
Exactly, and how I always like kind of like argue against that is like, well, I don't know my chromosomes, and someone had their chromosomes tested because you had to test to determine what is your chromosome makeup, and someone is single X, and I bring that up. So what is that person and stuff like that, and then bring up all the other combinations of chromosomes and stuff like that. So I'm using science against them, essentially.
It's a and it's also the sort of argument that these transphobes make. It's one that they can sort of substitute X, Y, and Z. So it's like, what your chromosomes must be this or that, and it's like, well, actually, there's more than just that. Then it suddenly switches to, your hormones, and it's like, well, actually, you can change your hormones, and it's not really a binary model. Oh, well, actually, your skeleton bones, and it's like, well, you don't. You can't tell someone's gender just from their bones, because that's just a bit absurd, really, isn't it? It's like, and gender models have always been men and women, and it's like, well, there's actually lots of societies around the world that have had more than two genders, and really, gender is just a social construct. And they just sub one in for another and another, and they're quite blatantly ignoring science and stuff. But they're conservatives, so they have tradition on their side, and they've got the societal societal privilege and systemic favoritism on their side. They can
hierarchies,
the fact that they have control of this medium to understand to control discourse. Therefore they can say, well, it's always been men and women, because they've been in control of discourse for so long that it appears as though there have only been men and women. It's silly. Let me just remove the common sense guy who's switching.
Because we're not.
That's a notable lack of common sense.
So you can tell basic gender from bones, same as basic race. Lol.
What is basic?
That has been debunked a million times.
Let's see. What were the options? Report, remove, put user in timeout, hide user on this channel. What should I do?
You should hide him so he'll get the views, I suppose.
Well, we're doing it on air, so I don't know. It's like we could do this by a committee. I don't know.
Let's put him on timeout.
This is your channel, so like I'm Ericus. I can't tell you what to do, Owen, and stuff like that.
So it's gonna time him out for 5 minutes. So hopefully, when he comes back, he'll stop putting like eugenics bogwash in the chat.
Yeah.
About what he did.
I mean, I'm disappointed, because I had a really good conversation with Common Sense, like on like somewhere on stream, and I sort of told him my story, whatever, and he was sort of sympathetic. Like, the thing is, this is we're having an echo chamber, so, but we disagree with each other. I mean, we disagree with each other behind the scenes, and the thing is, though, it's not like, we've all been on streams with like people who are different from us. Like for me, because it's my social realms, like people who disagree with me, because I have a lot of friends in that side of the community, and then but Owen and Lapis, like they've been on so many streams with people who are right wing, so it's like, we're just sitting here just shooting the shit. We're not really
Plus, like, if you're gonna put like hateful stuff in the chat, that's not only hateful stuff, but stuff that you've been told why it's hateful like 50,000 times. Like, I'm pretty sure he's been in my last like 5 hangout chats, and until I blocked him on Twitter, was always in my mentions saying, "Oh, well, actually, you can't just say this," and he'll have like 10 replies of people saying, "Oh, well, here's some links." It's like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to say the same thing again." And it's like, what's the point of just having someone around who's just going to say stuff like that? Like,
here's what I would say. I would say if all that person is getting out of this stream is they enjoy doing this sort of shit posting, then if you mute them or don't give them that platform, they'll just leave. But if they're actually interested in what we're saying, they'll stay, and they don't need to be able to speak or spewing this crap in order to watch. So if they do actually listen to us, that's great, and I think that's a good thing you're doing. But we don't need you. We don't need the you part of that. You can listen to us. We don't need to listen to you doing this stuff that, like, his assumption was that we don't hear this all the time. Like, we've heard all these arguments a million times. Like, I'm trans. I hear all this crap like every day of my life. I don't need another outlet when I'm just chilling in a stream.
Yeah, especially from the common sense guy as well. Like,
Yeah,
It's
how,
hilarious.
How
That's
arrogant do you have to be? Like, oh yeah, I'm the voice of common sense. Like,
Seems to have a high opinion of himself, but he's admitted to me before publicly that he doesn't actually read the responses you give him. It's just of a waste of time engaging with him. I disagree with you in terms of engaging with right-wing people. I do think there's a use in dialogue.
Definitely. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a two-way street.
It does have to be a dialogue. You do have to listen to what other people say, and there has to be a mutual respect for the information that's being provided. It can't just be, I've provided this information, I'm now going to ignore it. You know.
Well, that's exactly the thing. In order to have even a discussion with someone, you have to assume that the other person is there in good faith, or else you're not going to get anywhere. And we can't assume this guy's here in good faith because he's very clearly not. And if he had shown any ounce of good faith, then we could, but we can't.
I mean, it's so inconsistent because I think it was Common Sense guy. Like I think I remember speaking to him at some length on it was on a stream that I was on, and I told him sort of my story, and it was very different. But I know there's an inconsistency between what you're writing and what you're saying. Like, you're probably better off on the live stream. You'll probably present yourself a lot better.
I mean, touching on what you said, Lapis, you're absolutely right. Dialogue is really important. It's always important to be communicating, and I think it's really important to keep yourselves open and willing to try and help people understand, because it's always important to have a good heart, an open heart. But at the same time, we need to be wary of people who are quite blatantly using it as a tool to either waste time, cause dissent, all those sorts of things. Also, like, people have no obligation to engage with people. So at the same, while I enjoy talking, just in general, but
who doesn't enjoy talking?
I can people.
But just people. It's not like every single person should be. Oh, I'm gonna debate you, like, and also people have the opportunity to cut people out of their social space. People have emotional needs and their own well-being to consider. And if there's just some person like, oh, why are you a legitimate person? Please prove your existence to me now. Educate me. It's no one has to interact with that. Like, regardless of the fact that you got the, like, because people don't. That's the other thing as well. Lots of people don't, even when they're presented with a logical argument and all the sources and all the right tools, they still have to use them. And a lot of people don't. Even aside from politics, even when you just make an argument, like, they often, their opinion is pre-ingrained. So the idea that every single person has to keep rolling the dice and changing and trying with every single bigot and right winger out there is not true at all. But at the same time, if you have the capacity to, it's good to try, because you never know. You might just start the spark, which ignites.
Oh, I don't
have any delusion. Conversation is like magic or something, and if I just make the perfect argument, then all of a sudden, I'll wave my magic wand.
His heart will grow.
This Trump supporter will be transformed into a communist.
Overnight too. Just like in the movies.
It doesn't work like that. But I do believe that there is a certain importance to countering the narrative that the left is so weak and fragile, and we hate debate. We can't discuss ideas. We're just so afraid of conversation. I'm not certainly like that. I adore conversation. Although, it also has to be conversation where there is good faith involved. And obviously, there are people who take advantage of someone who wants to have conversation. You do have to be careful of that. And I've run across a few of those people, and it is useful to to put a stop to it when you need to, and to not just let yourself become a dupe.
Also, it's like no one is obligated with your time. Yes, you have the freedom to speak, but no one else has to listen to what you're saying. They have that choice as well, which is why block buttons are around and stuff like that, and hide this user or put the user in timeout and stuff like that. I mean,
we're kind of busy. I mean, because a lot of our time is spent like we're kind of arguing between ourselves, not in a bad way, in a bad faith way, but you know, there might be points where I think, okay, I don't, you know, because I'm probably the fish out of the water or something like that, because I'm the one who's the social democrat, and everyone else here is socialist. So there's obviously it's a diverse bunch in here, and then you know, sometimes when it comes to sort of activism or whatever, it's like you know, I have a bit more of a incremental approach. If I'm, you know, introducing sort of gender ideas like non-binary stuff, I kind of like dip my feet in the water very carefully before I gauge like what people are going to say. Yeah, or at least put forward any sort of arguments or whatever. I just I'm sort of careful about, you know, how I put it forward, and yeah, and I'm a little bit milder in my sort of activism, and so some people don't agree because I'm very good at the respectability politics when it comes to, you know, the queer stuff that I talk about.
I mean, I guess I'm quite the opposite, really. While I don't think I'm a particularly rude person. I don't like, you know, like you start screaming at people or anything. But at the same time, I think that it's important to be quite firm, because I feel as though when you allow for you know, too much just civility and decency, you allow the idea that you know, the right-wing mindset, the transphobia, the homophobia, racism, sexism, all those, you know, forms of discrimination and marginalization, they gain legitimacy in many a way. And if there's no, you know, visible front of aggression and attack to that discrimination, then the fire that is needed to, you know, erase it is tempered somewhat. I've said this before, but I look back to the civil rights era, and we look at people like Martin Luther King, who a lot of people wrongly think was just some person who showed up one day and said, "Oh, racism's bad," you know, and everyone just
I have a dream,
and everyone just sort of laid down.
And then he died, and there was nothing else to it.
And the Klan just like discarded their robes and like just joined society, and everyone held hands and stuff. But no, it's, you know, King was.
I mean, I have a dream, but all dreams matter.
Yeah, like. And you know, while King.
Not all dreams.
he spoke of, you know, loving one another and stuff, and of course, because, you know, that's at the core. That's the whole point. But to get there, you know, you got to recognize that. Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, bad, wrong things which need to be stopped. Racism not just going to go away through compromise. It's gonna, you know, there's no compromise to be had with the oppressor, with the, you know, the bad, wrong deed. And yeah, it's true. Lots of people were uncomfortable with this. There's lots of letters that King got from, you know, these whites, liberals, and conservatives who are like, oh well, you know, I'd agree with you more if you weren't so aggressive about it. And it's
he
like,
responded to those.
The aggression was the whole reason that the debate was had in the first place. You know, if there was no aggression from the activists and the people who were raising the correct points, then, you know, it could well have been 30 years back. You could have still been in the midst of, you know, Jim Crow, maybe even slavery and stuff. Think to LGBTQ rights. You know, you don't get there by just having a conversation like with what's it called? I'm trying to think of gay conversion therapists. If you're like, oh, well, you've got some points, guys, but you know, maybe try and tone it down a bit, guys. It's like, no, there's clear wrong. You know, gay conversion therapy, all those people, these, like, you know, the fundamentalist religious types, you know, they're clearly wrong. You don't compromise with people who are like that. And while I obviously it's important to still speak to them and, you know, be I'm not saying, you know, to make their lives a living hell or anything, but at the same time, I think that firmness is, you know, needed at the forefront of stuff. It's important to place that pressure on, you know, make it clear that the bigotry that has been around isn't going to stand, because I see it also as, you know, the consequence of bigotry is marginalized people, you know, being the targets of violence and abuse and harassment, and, you know, getting murdered and stuff. And you get people like Bolsonaro in Brazil who have built their rise to power off the, you know, targeting, oh, you know, we're losing our values, and, you know, putting that on LGBTQ people and black people and women and all that sort of stuff.
I've lost my temper maybe once or twice this year, 2008. Sorry, last year. It was what sort of disappoints me the most about probably the worst thing in the LGBT community is sort of that it's this sort of the playing of the letters against each other. That's this kind of one-upsmanship or something like that. It's sort of the ones that have been thrown. I mean, the ace people, asexuals and trans people and bisexuals. Those are the three letters that have been under a lot of scrutiny, because people are sort of, you know, a lot of people are looking at them saying, "Oh, you're not queer enough because you're bisexual. You know, you're in an opposite sex, you know, relationship. So therefore, like, you know," or they look at someone who's asexual, and then it's always this, you know, comparison. And then, you know, and trans people have got that, and I've got a fellow, like, you know, a friend of mine on Twitter, Micaiah B, who is a YouTube content. Imagine what that would be like. You're a trans man and an asexual, and so that's like a double.
I think he deleted his YouTube channel, unfortunately.
Yeah, but he's going through a double, double thing. It's like the for being ace and for being trans, you got like two trucks that are running.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like the you know, it's, you know, intersectionality, isn't it? The idea that our axes of discrimination and marginalization can cross sex, and, you know, sadly for lots of queer people that takes place over 2, 3, sometimes 4, you know, axes. I think we have to be you know, loads of far right groups put a lot of effort into breaking up marginalized groups. So, like, for instance, I see a lot of you know, supposed accounts saying, "Oh, well, I'm gay and I don't think trans people are a thing," and, you know, you look at them, and it turns out they're just like a far right puppet account. There's so many of them, like, and sadly they fool a lot of people who, you know, are, you know, A, looking for an easy way to say, "Oh, the left is bad," but B, just not in the know.
Why I left the left?
Is that what someone put in the chat?
No, they mentioned Dave Rubin, so that's why I called.
He made a rather infamous video on
PragerU.
What's it called? Yes, PragerU, who's actually not a university, but they pretend to.
They're funded also heavily by a lot of far right or libertarian capitalists, like oil companies and stuff like that. So it's like I do not watch their videos, and I don't think there's any video that's actually factually accurate. They get like Jordan Peterson to do videos and a couple like that, and they get like Stephen Crowder to do videos, and so yeah, whatever subject they want to talk about that PragerU approves and stuff like that. Yeah.
I find it actually a really good example of how capitalist society commodifies information. You've got people with so much capital, so much wealth, pouring their resources into making people less informed and making people less likely to question the hierarchy. So, you know, you're pouring your money into saying, "Oh, actually, climate change isn't that bad. You know, it's not really happening."
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's better to have our society because, you know, we earned our money, and, you know, they put their money into ensuring there's people who are going to fight their cause for them. You know, these people who, you know, are politically completely, you know, no clue about anything, like don't have a clue how society works, no idea about the economic reality of America. And, you know, they don't even have to pay them because we're just watching their videos on YouTube for free. It's a miserable state of affairs, but it's in a really, you know, sad situation in the terms of, you know, how people are losing out on information despite us living in the age of the internet where we should have more information than ever. but sadly, you've got. I mean, we started to see advertising. Well, I say started, but it already is. But look at the amount of traffic these websites can generate through pasting their adverts everywhere. TV, YouTube, physical advertising and stuff, posters. I saw an advert in London for Jordan Peterson's book, like just on the side of a subway. It's like, it's everywhere. It's in every facet of our, every medium you could think. And it's people with capital actively sabotaging information and actual genuine debate or their own wealth. And it's a perfect example of how capitalism is inherently corrosive to information. But then they'll insist, oh, actually, we've made anyone's free to do what we're doing. Just we've got like $1 billion more than you, so good luck competing.
We're all free, but what we have instead is the illusion of choice. So many different political positions, but yet for America for sure, and true in like UK and in Britain, only 2 big political parties that actually get power.
And these parties are basically part of, a larger superstructure, a greater kind of party of business. Sure, the Republicans have more reactionary social policies, and the Democrats usually tend towards more superficial social liberalism. But fundamentally, both parties still serve the interests of the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex. And what differs is the wings of capital that they represent. I suppose you might say that the Republicans represent more kind of oil, coal, the traditional industries, whereas the Democrats tend to represent the new technologies, the up-and-coming capitalist class in Silicon Valley, and Wall Street and soft power like finance.
And while it has to be said, the Democrats, for all their rubbishness, are still, better than the Republicans by a long way. Yeah, the Democrats don't have Nazis running in their party.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still,
they used to, but not.
I'm still worried about them.
Right, exactly.
I mean, because that's the thing with because we do focus a lot on the especially with a lot of the upcoming new politicians, because there was Bernie Sanders on one hand, but then because I was a big fan of his, but then when Ocasio-Cortez came onto the scene, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want to hear.
But she
not everything I agree with, but I mean, she's absolutely like she's bringing back this populism to the left that I think has been needed for a long time, and the like we often see on Twitter, it seems to be that we're worried about the Republicans, but I'm sort of worried about the Democrats as well, because there's a lot of establishment. Sort of institutionally entrenched type Democrats. Like I even heard comments from people, I forgot who it was, maybe Dianne Feinstein or Nancy Pelosi, the ones that were sort of in that establishment Democrat, and they sort of think, oh well, she just got in, it was just an anomaly. And it's like, well, no, people are embracing the populist sort of like the further left-wing ideals of what she's offering, which was evident by Sanders' popularity. So
yeah, I mean,
like, I'm worried about the internal.
Sorry, you go ahead, Wolf.
Yeah, I'm sort of worried about. It's kind of a two-pronged attack with people like that who seem to have a threat to the establishment. It's the the right-wing establishment of the Republican, and then to some extent, I'm also concerned about the the establishment, the sort of entrenched sort of practices that have been practiced for so long within the Democrat Party.
Like the way I see it, the Democrats is like being shot in the leg and being left to bleed out to die, and the Republicans are like being shot in the lung or the heart or something and being left to die.
Yeah,
you're going to die much quicker from a shot in the heart, but you're still going to die. We're still going to run out of time. And if you at least have more time to get help and to fix the wounds, then that's better. But obviously, you're still going to be bleeding out if you don't get the help. Or another way, a cancer, and not in the meme, this is cancer type way. I mean, like a literal degeneration of your cells and the killing of the organs and tissue in your body. Like, you can halt it. You can, have chemotherapy and kill some of those cells. But if you don't get rid of the cancer, you're going to die. You're not going to have a body that works. You're going to have tissue and organs which have been killed off by by the cancer, by the decay of your inner functions, and that's capitalism in a nutshell. And while the Democrats, you're not gonna take the worse option. Democrats are still light years ahead of Republicans, but it's not enough. And like you said, Wolf, Cortez, who's not even, she's not a socialist like many of these like Red Scare people seem to think.
Oh,
like,
they're saying they're saying she's a communist or whatever, but she's probably a social democrat, which is it's kind of in line with my own sort of personal philosophy.
Yeah,
but
I think there needs to be something said here, which is that politically, or at least political career-wise, she's a social democrat. We can't say what she's personally thinking. She might be a socialist personally, but her political platform is not socialist. Neither is Bernie. And Bernie, especially because we know a lot more about Bernie's life, Bernie does seem like, at least in his personal life, he, at least when he was younger, was a socialist, but he's never politically, he's always politically been more social democratic. But yeah, we can't know what they're thinking, but definitely certain their policies are social democratic. But they're, especially with AOC, like she's really good at hitting on a lot of the wording, or like the things that other people won't say. Like Bernie still stays pretty like sort of like in the liberal definition of politically correct, where he says things that don't really challenge the status quo as much. He's kind of like working within the status quo to move things left, whereas AOC is actively countering the status quo just by everything she says constantly, and she's been very consistent about that. So yeah, I think that needs to be said.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think that using every axis we have to move forward is really important. So just because we're aware of the failings of our horrible state politics and our dreadful unfunctioning democracy doesn't mean we can still try and use it. We still have a medium there, even if it's a flawed one, and as long as we're also combining it with every axis we can, like protesting in the street, using internet, using every medium we have, it's still a positive. Like for instance, if the Democrats were in charge of the US, if Labour are in charge of the UK, if we have left-wing social democrat parties winning elections, yeah, sure, it's not going to just solve capitalism. We're not going to just suddenly have socialism. They're not even socialists, but suddenly you've got more actual progress, even if it's marginal. You got more money being given into welfare programs. You got more money being put into education and stuff and healthcare. And yeah, sure, it's not going to solve everything. We're not going to fix the world by electing Sanders as president, but it's a start, and every improvement is still an improvement. I think we got to consider that the world did not get to where it is today just by one person saying, like, let's mess things up. One capitalist didn't just suddenly snap his fingers and like ruin the planet. It's a result of so many decisions and actions and the course of power structures throughout history. And if we're going to break it down and make things fairer, we're going to have to work bit by bit along every avenue. And obviously the planet is in a pretty dire state given how the environment's not doing so great, but at the same time that still doesn't mean we can't try and focus forward in the in one such avenue. It's like what's it called, using I can't think of an analogy right at this second, but we can use each and every avenue to make progress. Every victory is a victory, regardless of how small. And as long as they're all combined, as long as the efforts of every single axis to improve are used, we can focus. I feel like I've said that like 5 times in just like different worded ways.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing to say is that a lot of people on the left are looking at historical revolutions, and they don't understand that even every historical revolution has been different, and that the West has a very different definition, needs to have a very different definition of what revolution is, because there is some places like in Syria where their country has been shattered, and that was I mean, obviously it's a horrible event, but that was a prime opportunity for something like a revolution to happen, because you have you have people that are willing to fight, you have guns, the government's weakened, and you can take land. Like it's a very different situation, whereas that's never going to happen in the West, and we need to understand that you can still have a revolution without having guns and killing capitalists or guillotines or all that crap. Like you can still have a revolution. And I think that there's a lot of revolutionary actions that have nothing to do with violence or any of that. And that's, I wouldn't necessarily say someone like Bernie Sanders or AOC are revolutionary, but they're certainly, compared to the status quo, maybe, but they're at least stepping stones that we can continue to move the momentum left. They're good stepping stones.
Yeah, change can come in all forms, and be it through, literally fighting away fascists in the street via Antifa, or
that's a good point too.
Or be it, through educative memes.
Memes can work though. No, seriously, memes did actually work to me, because and not that I was far reactionary on Black Lives Matters, but I was indifferent until someone said, "Stop defending police officers gunning unarmed black men in the streets," and I'm like, "Fuck, you're right."
Yeah,
I shouldn't defend that. Absolutely. So memes can work. It can sway some people. So social media can be a part of it as well. And yes, we should not only should we own and control the means of production, we should also own and control the memes of production as well. And I say the left memes far better than the right, judging from my Twitter.
Well,
the avenue.
We tend to get the dregs in our mentions, I think. I do want to address, what do people think of the idea presented by LeftTube celebrity Garrett, that the reactionaries will always take up arms against a social revolution, and thus it is necessary for the proletariat to always maintain arms at any moment, because at any moment the reactionaries may take up arms, and so everyone should be armed.
I think that that's a good thing to have a discussion on, but I don't think that it's necessarily always true. I mean, here's what I'm thinking. I'm a military history is my thing. I do a lot of military analysis, and I know a lot about the U.S. military and NATO militaries. There's never going to be a situation where it's going to matter. In a macro scale, you might save your life, which is good. So if you want that protection, great, but don't think it's part of a revolution. That's part of self-defense, which is good. Self-defense is a huge part of living in the modern world, but it's not like a thing that's going to sway the tides. And also you have to remember that a lot of people read theory and they think, hey, a lot of this theory is saying we need to be ready at any moment. But you have to remember that a lot of this theory was written when, some of it was when muskets were still used, but a lot of it was when bolt action rifles or that type of thing was used. That a revolution was a lot easier than logistically, because the arms weren't so advanced. There's back then a military rifle and a civilian rifle were almost identical. Nowadays they're so far different. In Canada especially, getting a hunting rifle is really easily, but you cannot have an AR-15 or an AK. So it's just important to understand that while I agree it's valid to use these for self-defense or something, there are chances that a full-scale revolution would ever happen. It's just unlikely. Now, of course, I'm going to separate this from racial discussion, because I would never say to another race, you can't have this for that. I wouldn't do that, because I can't understand. I can't speak for them to say what would you consider to be reasonable for self-defense, but I know that on a macro scale, it's just not an armed revolution in America, Canada. These things are unlikely, and here's what I say: I would never say it's impossible, but I would say don't depend on it. We have to be working in ways that are much more practical, because we can't assume that it's going to happen.
Is it not the case that a lot of people tend to see things as unilateral and just 2D. It's like, oh, it's going to be this way or that way. Much like a single choice option in a survey, when instead there should be an incorporation of all kinds of things. So the self-defense, the having practical armed what's it called, counter defense, self-defense, there we go, against the obvious far right presence that exists both in the state and independently. All those things. Also using the clear and massive benefit of communication and the internet. We unlike the people who were alive back in the 1800s, we have communication with someone on the other side of a planet. A collective of workers has never been more united, in theory, because of the fact that we have almost have a universal language via the internet. We have all these tools which we can use to progress ideas and thoughts and all sorts of better ways, because it's not just about fighting and like, oh, you gotta kill a million people and then we'll win. It's like, that's obviously not the whole point. The whole point is liberation and freedom. And sometimes people it's better to speak to some, and you will make more progress. And obviously, I'm not trying to say, oh, we're going to talk our way to victory or whatever. I'm not going to, I'm not trying to say that like, I just like blossom the fruits of knowledge or something, and it will just magically, the heart will grow 3 times, and the capitalists will just suddenly lay down their guns and say, oh, it's all yours. But progress can come through so much more than just, oh, this method or that method. It should be all incorporating, and no one person has just some massive blueprint to doing it. It's the effort of quite literally workers around the world, people of the working class uniting and putting all their ideas together, and seizing control through the justified reclamation of our produce and our world. And subsequently, I feel as though too much is I guess held against the idea of the left, in the sense that, you don't know exactly how a revolution is going to go. It's like, well, no one knows what's going to happen in the future. Like, no one's a prophet. No one's a
nobody knows how effective the fucking wall is going to be.
Well, I mean, we've got pretty good predictors that it's going to be pretty useless.
Well, for some things we can see the wall is going to be a bit of a shambles.
Even useful for what it was trying to do, it would be immoral and should be gotten rid of anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not like it's not going to be vandalized and ruined pretty quickly anyways. But I do want to touch on some of the stuff that's been said in the chat, because it is kind of my wheelhouse. But Garrett did sort of elaborate on what he was saying, and I do think that if we're going to touch on Rojava, that yes, there's a good model there that we can take some lessons from, which is, I think everyone should, who wants to at least, I'm not going to force anyone, but I think everyone should try to get trained to use firearms, and to understand the basics of that, and also communication, like using a radio and stuff like that, and other communication tactics, and just basic survival stuff like compass and all that. But I also think that that a really good model with that was that Rojava, anyone who wants it, and most people are encouraged heavily to do it, is they get up to the Asayish, which is the their police. They get trained up to that standard. So the police standard, and how they have self-policing there. So everyone gets trained how to use a firearm, how to handle sexual assault cases, like all this basic stuff. And it's really useful because even though they're still in a transition, they're already prepared for basically any situation that happens. And then talking at the other angle, for the arms networks types of things, we can also take a lot of lessons from that, because the SDF gets a lot of arms through the PKK, especially recently, which is a network where they are allies who are getting arms to them and fighters to them, supplies, basic medical stuff through very abnormal networks like that are very different from what we think. It's not like transport ships or trucks or convoys or stuff. There's very alternative ways of doing that, which are we can study definitely. I think is important. And it's this thing where if ideally we can get to a better world without this kind of stuff, but also it's good to be prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
And
like,
just yeah.
I mean,
because
so
I
no,
think
you go ahead,
there will
Amelia.
be violence. I
yeah,
think
exactly. That's what, like
we should disperse with the idea that there won't be any resistance from the capitalist class. I mean, there's always been resistance from any owning class when people seek to deprive them of their property, of their method of exploitation.
Yeah.
However, I really find quite annoying and alienating this kind of mystification and this glorification of revolution, and especially violence. Like there's some people on the left who seem to love the thought of killing so many people. It just provides them with such glee, and it's very strange to me.
I mean, it's one thing.
I mean,
it's one thing to fantasize about throwing a.
Sorry to interrupt. To be fair, whilst this isn't me personally, if someone who has been, oppressed and treated abysmally has somewhat of a feeling of not necessarily joy, but sort of anticipation of overthrowing people and stuff, I can't say
it's more sadism, I think.
Well,
I mean,
think of the slaves in Haiti, for instance, overthrowing their owners and stuff. Like I find it somewhat futile to focus. Like I get that some people are a little bit too like oh
yeah, for sure. Some people get actual joy from it. I think for a therapeutic thought, I think it's good, but I don't think anyone should be getting joy from it. I don't think anyone should be like getting glee from the thought of killing other humans. That just seems like a stance. Yeah. Whereas even if they got to a point where they actually could overthrow their oppressors violently, I feel like that precedent is actually bad for a post capitalist.
Of course. Yeah.
I think and this is why I think it's important to challenge the attitudes among our revolutionaries. Among. Sure. Left-wing circles, not just to excuse all behavior because, we're oppressed, it's okay there. Because we're oppressed, everything's okay. We can just permit ourselves to be nasty and awful. No, we have to maintain.
I froze.
We need to maintain a sort of discipline. We need to maintain a sort of, a better nature because, I do believe there will be violence. I do believe that there's going to need to be some hard decisions. And I think there's probably, I don't think that we live in the world where everyone hugs and everyone sings Kumbaya and everyone lives happily ever after. However, what we really do need to worry about this sadism because in the past it's really led revolutions astray. When the main point of your leftism becomes hating the oppressor more than it becomes about helping the oppressed and building a better world, you've left leftism behind. You've just entered into a kind of, kind of sadistic madness.
I think even in Christiosity has noticed that she has spoken about this, that she sometimes in Antifa discourse or something like that, she feels this energy of this achievement of just let's punch Nazis, and it's it should be for self-defense because anti-fascism we have to fight as well as we can against fascism and stuff like that. We shouldn't be gleeful about being able to punch another person and stuff like that. And just how Bronx Bronger mentioned on the hangout I did with other anarchists is that he said, listen, let's not the guillotines is not a serious part of our actual platforms and stuff like that. We can meme about that. Sure, we're talking about it in jest and stuff like that, and that's fine. But we shouldn't seriously be about killing other people and stuff like that, even if they've done us wrong and stuff like that. So I too agree with your point that we should not glorify violence and stuff like that. Violence is necessary, and violence, and I hope for a non-violent revolution. But it's I do agree with all of your points. I would just leave it at that.
I'd say that I do agree. and obviously, I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, there's no issue or anything. I just I don't know. I don't see it as colossal a sticking point as perhaps I don't see it as the focus of stuff. Like I don't see it as such a blight upon stuff that it's something that is less of, I don't want to say importance, but it's not high up on the priority list, in my opinion, because I don't see it as such a problem. I believe in the better nature of a lot of left-wing people. I think that while it's true that a lot of people are angry, I don't think that crosses the line into just outright sadism a lot of the time. And yeah, sure, some people, I'm not gonna, obviously there's people who are a bit questionable, but it's not something that I consider as frequent. When I think of people talking about guillotine jokes and stuff, and thinking of what's it called, eating rich and stuff, it's stuff that it doesn't have any real effect on me. It's the expression it isn't to use. Going back to something that you said, Amelia, about self-defense and self-policing and all those those good things, I see them as incorporated into information and sort of a given for just advancing humanity in general. Like, I think it's very important for people to be taught how to in the event of crisis and the events that beget it, be taught how to defend themselves, how to cope, for instance, if they were in the wild, in the event of scenarios, which I don't think is something that would be, because a lot of people think, oh, everyone's gonna have to become a soldier. It's like, well, no one has to become, Total Recall Arnold Schwarzenegger, battling your way around with like machine guns and stuff. But it's not going to be as difficult to introduce proper education along that form into people of a left-wing persuasion, especially.
I mean, I'd be useless. I mean, it's the one thing that
you're an educator, Wolf.
Well, I should have phrased it differently. You wouldn't be useless because everyone has something that they're good at. When I say people should learn these things, I mean like just the basics, like be familiar with firearms, because this is the main reason why, and this is the main reason why they do it in Rojava. It's not so that every single person can be a huge part of the military. It's so that you get used to them being around and the safety of them. Because if you live in an environment, like if you're in this situation where there is a revolution and you're all in the same building and there's guns laying around, everyone needs to know how to use a gun, because it's just in emergency situations and for safety. If you pick it up, you don't want to accidentally fire it and all that stuff. But also, I think I should have expanded on it differently. This includes like medical training, basic medical training, basic navigation, because power outages are frequent in revolution, where the state will cut power to regions where it's destabilized in order to sort of like smoke them out, and stuff like that. And for communications, you need radio, but you also need alternative forms of communication because they have radio blockers. It's stuff like this where you need to. Everyone's good at something, and everyone needs to be getting the basics down for the main stuff, and then using what they're good at. Like for me, as an example, I study a lot of this military stuff, so I understand guerrilla tactics and I understand basic like low-level tactics. I could help with that, and I can do map navigation and radio usage. And other people have other things. Like, you might think that something you know is useless, but there's cases where stuff like this always comes up, where like if you know something, it can come in a key moment. It can be very useful.
Yeah, because that's I mean, I think, because obviously, as a lot of people said, you don't want that. I mean, a certain sadism where people sort of take pleasure in the idea of just violence for the sake. But I don't think there's any, I mean, it can take a little a teeny bit of pleasure if you like, break a little window here and there, or maybe.
No, that's
a little
completely
fire.
different. I mean, like hurting other humans, killing.
Yeah, I think like the like pleasure in like killing other people.
Right.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's a problem, I don't think it's a problem when you're memeing or whatever, but I think the reason it's a problem is because, and I actually do think it's relevant, is because I was studying a lot of these revolutions, like the Russian Revolution and these failed revolutions that ultimately just resulted in another state that wasn't anti-capitalist.
Another oppressive system.
Yeah, is that they did take sort of a sadistic pleasure in killing and maiming and hurting other people. And you will notice that in the very violent Russian Revolution, there was a lot of the glee in the overthrowing. I mean, I don't want to speak for all of it. Like, obviously there was movements that were much more grounded, but there was some, like the Bolsheviks and Soviets were very violent people doing very violent things. And afterwards, it didn't change. The gulags were another form of violence, and there was a lot of imprisonment, assassinations, and they went to war, and it was a very violent war. It was a justified war, but it was still very violent. There was no end to Soviet violence. It just, the entire length of the state was just an extension of the violence. And that's what we need to understand, is that if we're having a violent revolution, we need to understand that it is a necessity and that it has to stop after it's over. We can't keep going on with the violence. The violence is a transitional, violence is transitional, and once it's over, it needs to fade away or stop, because otherwise it will just another system. Violence is in a way a form of hierarchy. It is someone inflicting a power onto someone else that can hurt them or take their life, and that needs to be considered. It needs to be considered that needs to be limited as much as possible. War is very different from a peaceful state, or at least transitioning to a peaceful state. Is you don't want it to continue on. So it's just something to consider, and everyone needs to consider. You can have pleasure in the idea, but of like breaking windows, overthrowing it, or just the generic idea of a violent revolution. But the specific sadistic pleasure in killing other people, I think, is definitely a problem, because then it will, after the revolution, just continue on.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was like. I think perhaps my problem was that I thought we were conflating people being sort of happy that things were going to change and just justifiably angry and
no.
No, I think there's justifiable rage at oppression.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah, and even the thought of
there's rage at oppression and politics that have transformed from liberation into, sadomasochism.
Yeah, but I feel as though the whole point of violence in the first place is to like liberate and to get rid of it's counter-violence. It's inherently counter-violent because the whole reason for violence is just to forget the violence being enacted onto you, both from the capitalist system and from the the capitalists / fascists who are going to then fight you to restore their power. Like I'm not trying to say that it's not a problem. I just think that like, for instance, the Soviets, people within the Bolsheviks and I think of Stalin and stuff. I don't see that as a communist who ended up being too violent. I see that as a clear manipulative factor within Bolsheviks, within Russian circles that you played his cards right, ended up with a massive amount of power, and thus co-opted things like you said with I don't see another place of hierarchy. I feel like I'm perhaps not wording this properly, but essentially violence, while something I'm talking rubbish, when the idea that people that are that there's I guess we are all conditioned to see all forms of violence as bad, regardless of the context that it exists in. And I worry that when we describe or when we go too far with describing things as sadomasochistic, like you said, Daphis. Like, while it does apply in some cases, I worry that we end up giving too much credence to somewhat ideas like that come about from critics of left-wing discourse, like, you know, the people who are like, oh, you know, those leftists are just a bunch of violent folks who go around, you know, just destroying stuff. And it's like it feels like sometimes it's born of that to a degree.
And here's the thing: if we're criticizing it within our own ranks and trying to actively improve whatever flaw there may be, we discount the narrative that the left are just hypocrites who condemn far-right violence but perpetrate their own violence willy-nilly without any reason. I believe that there is, you know, justifiable violence. I think everyone does. Or at least anyone who's actually thinking about the issue and who isn't a pacifist would agree that there is justifiable violence. My issue is, you know, there are people who are LARPers who aren't serious about left-wing politics, and, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean that I hate them forever. It just means that, you know, you have to talk to them. You have to try to improve them. You know, leftism isn't just about improving the outside world. It's also about improving our own spaces and making them better spaces for activists to work in, and making them more approachable spaces for people in the public.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, it's like when other people like point out, it's like you said this thing is like, oh, that's like a bit of like a, and then so I self-reflect. It's like, wait a minute, did I say something ableist? And then I think that it's like, oh, well, yeah, oh, okay, I see what I did wrong, and so if I know what I did wrong, I apologize instead of being like, no, that's not what I said. No, what's wrong with you? Something like that. Yeah, so I have to, if another leftist is like come to me and saying something that they don't like about me, but what I'm doing, I should, or as I hope I like to, and I think I have in the past, reflect on what I said and what I did and see if I can do better, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel, so were you going to say something, Amelia?
No, I was just saying self-reflection is very important.
Okay. Of course, yeah. No, I completely agree. And
I mean, have some skepticism. Give yourself like two, because I use the 24-hour rules. I mean, it's not that it's happened to me before, but I've sort of made this point to a lot of people. Like, they sort of, you know, someone may call you out, and, you know, there's two options. You may be like wrong, or you may be like, you may not have done something wrong. Like, it may be the other person who's at fault. So, you know, as long as you critically reflect on it and, you know, don't jump to a conclusion straight away. Because I think people do that straight away. They jump straight to a conclusion and they might get defensive. But I'll just say, like, sleep on it overnight and, you know, and then react accordingly the next day. And
yeah, exactly. You know, people are, you know, more than just two-dimensional cutouts. Having said that, though, I wanted to talk about something I saw today. I recently retweeted a meme you shared, Geek, a very good one, about how it was, you know, the inane distribution of resources and, you know, stuff under capitalism.
I've been getting a lot of retweets from that meme, so
it was, you know, it's very prescient. You know, how the you know, the banker takes 19 of the cookies and then tells the worker that the immigrant is going to steal the one. I would even argue that, you know, the worker is also sort of the immigrant as well. But
especially in the American context.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. In the replies to this, you know, obviously there was a, you know, this is communism in a meme, and it was no stock found or something. It was like essentially saying, oh, you've all starved.
Yeah.
I looked at the people who'd liked it, and I saw a Confederate flag, and I thought, well, this is interesting. And then I went onto their account, and it was like white nationalist. In fact, let me go to the tweets. I'll screen share. Hold on.
Sure. My tweet is being screen shared by Owen McDonald and YouTube.
Thank you very much, Geek.
Remember, I've been drinking.
Yeah.
It exemplified so much of what I wanted to sort of focus on. Right, here we go. So mini content warning for the sort of stuff I'm about to show you. Where do I switch the screen share button? There we go. That one there. Share. Right. So, so here's the initial tweet from the lovely your current screen name, New Year resolution revolution, like you said earlier. Capitalism distilled in a meme. So yeah, pretty basic, pretty easy to follow, and good for Geek. You got a lot of retweets and likes. So yeah, we've got this, generic, you starve to death under communism, ignoring the millions who starve yearly under capitalism, but part of the course. So I looked at the likes, and I saw this little golden, this utter stain of a flag. This arrow was made in MS Paint, by the way. I was wondering how to do it, but then I looked at their bio. American nationalist, former police sergeant, proud Southerner, white nationalist, and identitarian.
Oh no!
Hashtag MAGA,
Hashtag everything wrong with the world.
Hashtag drain the swamp. Hashtag it's okay to be white. So just every box ticked for like scummy things. And then I thought, okay, well, I've got 3 and I've got space for one more photo. Let's find, there's probably going to be some pretty bad tweets. And I was thinking I'll screenshot the first one I see. And I saw all of these. So, just immediately, but bear in mind, these are all within a period of 24 hours. In fact, less than that.
How is this not a parody?
It's not, no. So you got the, gay degeneracy, ethnic replacement of Europeans, loss of culture and ethnic populations. Do you want the Mexicans to flood our country? Trace to the USA. Go back to the
Treat it to the USA.
What?
Yep. You can see just the different account ads, by the way, just the various. It just goes on and on. The white race built Western civilization.
Oh my fucking god!
It's awful, isn't it? The gays and Indians can't just leave. It gets worse.
Hang on, I thought they were against collectivism. They say white people like we, because my ancestors they
exactly.
But nebulous.
Well, I mean, that's the inherent hypocrisy in white nationalist ideology. They're against identity politics when it's the other side. They're pro-white identity politics. They're pro-male identity politics. They're pro-straight identity politics.
Let's be. I mean, let's take as individuals. Let's take a like collective view of our achievements, like all the good stuff, but then the bad stuff. No, they're dead. We didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah. And then these two were, well, not these two. This one was one of my most revealing ones. Pinochet may have been quite brutal, but he both saved Chile from communism and brought an economic miracle to the country. When he trashed the country of its political freedom, and he also described them as non-compliant people as well. Just in case the fascism wasn't fascism enough already.
Oh.
And then the one underneath is just the usual transphobia. But
by the way,
it's just a compilation of just awful opinions. And just it exemplifies the sort of person that is avidly against the far left. It's essentially just a fascist, basically. Just this awful like stain on society, using their voice online to pretty much every single white supremacist box, basically. And it's the consequence of a system which is built around capital, built around maximizing power over others. You of course divulge into racism, the idea that white people are better than black people, and thus as a form of power over them have the right to commodify their countries and take their humanity away from them as a form of maximizing power. The what's it called? Someone's going to say then anti-LGBTQ stuff. That that contributes to the patriarchal view of society, because it's the man and the woman, the wife in the house doing the household labor for free, for the man to sit on top of the hierarchy and thus benefits from that unpaid labor. The fact that queer people exist is like, oh, well, they can't exist because then it would question our hierarchy, because it's like, oh, well, suddenly we're not going to be on top if, thank you, Geek. We're not going to be on top if, we're acknowledging the existence of non-binary people, and people who aren't in a heterosexual relationship and stuff, and people who can people who change gender and stuff, and the idea that our entire model of science is completely like outdated and wrong. And so it become, the anti-LGBTQ stuff is in part affected by that. And every single, axis for discrimination, was there because that's the sort of person that is, the consequence of being anti-communist, anti-progress, essentially, anti-liberation of workers. And, at one point, that guy was probably just, your typical right-winger. He was just, I don't like the commies and all that. But over time, their hatred for anti-communism boiled over and allowed them to be co-opted by the far right, to the point where you get someone literally waving around a Confederate flag. And scarily enough, he was in the police. He was in the police force. That should, to me,
so he's a retired policeman, not a current policeman.
Oh, so he was probably like, one of the ones who was like, Jim Crow should never have ended. I mean, it's not even a probably. He literally, white nationalist.
Hey, all those who join forces are the same who burn crosses. A line from a Rage Against the Machine song, and that song was from the '90s. And yet, many of Rage Against the Machine songs today is still relevant today. In fact,
still woke.
Yeah, exactly. I want to mention that the last tweet from that Confederate flag account was a reply to Nick Fears or something like that. They're going to be on a hangout tomorrow on Garrett's channel, the internet leftist celebrity who's still in the chat. Yay, Garrett! And he's going to have a live stream on his channel with H Barber Guy and Lacking Sense, as well as like Nick Fears. So like shout out to like Garrett on this small 820 channel, YouTube channel, but still. And I want to credit that that was a Facebook post that was shared on my Facebook, and I saw that from my friend Marty, who is a trans woman herself, but that was from the Facebook group called Red Labor. So look on Facebook, Red Labor, because it's a British group essentially that it's kind of like basically like wants to like still like continue progress into like socialism and communism and stuff like that. I think it's stuff like that. So I want to give credit to credit's due. I don't know who originally posted that thing and took the photo. I don't know that, but at least those were my sources for the meme that I posted that got like 700 retweets or something like that. No, 700 likes and 200 retweets. What a day on Twitter I had yesterday.
More retweets.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, I need to just catch up with like thousands of videos from hundreds of different content creators, because there's loads of great people out there. And certainly if you're watching this, then you need to be watching the other people. This is like the bargain basement of like YouTube on my channel with like zero.
You're hard on yourself. You're quite insightful.
Short in this hangout. Who knows?
Hard on yourself, and you're quite insightful.
Well, thank you very much, Lapis.
So Garrett, where's Garrett been? Like, he disappeared.
He left and then he returned.
Was it not just a break?
I told you New Zealand was dangerous. Like everyone's saying, "Oh, Australia, everything's out to kill you," but then New Zealand YouTubers, they go missing for a long period of time. They fall down, volcanoes and geysers and shit.
To be fair to Garrett, he did have his second channel, the Magic Theater, which is great for film analysis and stuff like that. And like his Avengers videos is like really excellent. Or I love that video. My only problem with like his channel is that like a lot of the videos that he puts up that I still haven't watched, he says you must have watched this. You must watch this. I was like, oh crap. Okay, so to avoid spoilers, I have to watch all of these movies and TV shows before I watch this video and stuff like that. But when I eventually came, no, I did see Homecoming, and then I watched his video about like anti-heroes and the villain in Homecoming, Vulture, and I thought, oh, that was a really good video. Oh man. And it's one of those kind of like leftist video essay videos where it's just like it's about like movies and stuff like that. And when I watch a video that makes me like love the movie that they're talking about more, I always like those kind of videos and stuff like that. Wow, I didn't see that angle to like Spider-Man Homecoming, or to like even some of my favorite directors like Satoshi Kon.
Forever Frame of Painting did a great video on Satoshi Kon, one of my favorite directors. But anyway.
Well, no, I think that's sort of the beauty of I say beauty, like so it's quite self-indulgent, but I think one of the like left-wing ideas are designed to challenge injustice, to look at society in more depth than just saying, oh, this is the way things are. And in many ways, art is such a great medium for challenging that, to the point where many of the best pieces of art challenge the way we think about society. It sounds so like pretentious and but
at least we're aware of that.
Things like The Wire, The Sopranos, Oz, Breaking Bad,
I need to watch The Wire.
They are they're my favorites. They're my go-to. The Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh yes, I saw that in VHS.
No, I did. If you're into anime.
But, like anime gets a bad. I think because anime is, a lot of people see animation as, it's for kids, it can't be good. Which, firstly, kids shows, lots of effort is put into them because they have to write in a medium that obviously is aimed at younger people, but also has to have, when care is put into it, it's fantastic. There can be really brilliant, thoughtful pieces designed for, children. But like anime, obviously, it comes from a different set of studios and stuff to the West, where it's somewhat less commodified, I say. Well, I mean, I don't know enough about the history of Japan. Obviously, they still do have their their commodification and stuff. But compared to some of the schlock that you see on like Western TV, sometimes there's a lot of really amazing programs that come from Japan, which sort of dismissed as, it's kid stuff, or even even worse, dismissed as just like trash porn or whatever, as though that firstly, as though that just inherently makes it worse, but secondly, it ignores what's been going on in it. Like Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the best pieces of artwork of all time. Just the themes it explores in a very low budget when you think about it. Only one season. The final two episodes weren't even finished. Like the way they managed to salvage, running out of money, is outstanding. I could talk about it all day, but just things like that, like pieces of art which are so well thought out. Like the writing in those shows I just mentioned, from David Chase and David Simon, people who have mastered the art of language and conveying stuff, and actors like James Gandolfini and Edie Falco and stuff, Idris Elba, who else? Just so many. I could be here all day. It's fantastic. It's sort of stuff which is so crucial to not just film and art, but just life itself. Think of The Wire, and think of how has anyone here seen The Wire?
I need to, because like Garrett, who's in the chat, he's a big fan of The Wire, and I heard nothing but great things about The Wire. And
it's the best TV show ever. It's the best. It's like Garrett has literally just put in the chat. It's about the evils of capitalism and bureaucracy. It literally shows the decay of the American system because of the the hierarchies and the corruption and essentially the things that are so inherent to capitalism. They affect all walks of life. The way that policing is so morally and logically bankrupt, that it ends up just making things worse. The way the season 2, which lots of people think, oh, season 2's the worst one. No, it's outstanding because it shows you how workers are just the cogs of a system, used, maximizing their profit out of them, and then just dumped and left to rot. Where hardworking people who have been on the docks their entire lives, their generations, used essentially as just parts of a machine by the wealthy, and then as soon as they get a better machine, they're just left to die off on the docks, on docks where there's no jobs. The third season, where we just look at the political world, we look at Amsterdam, we look at how if people actually put a bit of thought into it, the drug problem wouldn't be such a drug problem. There wouldn't be such issues. But instead, it's all about, let's make our statistics, let's just get our arrest numbers up, let's put Carcetti in as mayor, who only cares about making himself better and literally votes against, or literally sabotages the progress that could be had for his own benefit. Look at see the school season. The school season was outstanding. Where we've got child actors. Child actors are often slated, but the children in this show were like 14 and 15. They're amazing. It's like you're actually in Baltimore. It's made by Baltimoreans. I don't actually know the correct term. Certainly people who are Baltimore through and through. Just who so clearly see the problems of this city. The cast is there's no this is the lead actor. It's an ensemble cast, but many of them there's obviously lots of Baltimore people there, but there's people from all across America and even some British people. Dominic West is there, Idris Elba's there. They're two famous Brits. The guy who plays Carcetti is Irish. It's so many people who just are part of this massive story of the American dream being this complete sham and ruining this city that has so much. There's so much potential and stories. I could go on, and I'm sure you don't want to hear me just. Well, if I had the energy to write a script and if I had the capability to edit beyond just my shoddy stuff, I would be writing all the time about it. It's essential. Everyone should watch it, and I'm not even joking. It's essential to just understand how our society has failed so many people, and just how hierarchy and positions of control and power and just the capitalism as a whole has just failed.
Yeah.
End piece. There we go. So that's
And scene.
And scene. Yes. I'm a theater child as well.
On the other side, though, I also really like So Bad It's Good stuff. I've spoken to Lapis a bit on one of my streams about The Room, which is one of my favorite films.
I still have not seen it. I've heard so much about it, but I still have not seen it. But I've seen videos about it, so I get the "you're tearing me apart" and all the other stuff.
It's so good to just study. There's
really
so much you can learn from it.
Everything went wrong.
The behind the scenes stuff too, with Tommy Wiseau firing actors and then hiring just extras and stuff, and then literally filming the film in chronological order. So when one of the actors quits, they have to replace them with somebody you've never seen before. Or the one of the chirp scene where he makes
you're like a chicken.
In that scene, Mark has shaved. Mark's Johnny's best friend, as he tells you 50 times. But Mark has shaved, but he shaved because Tommy Wiseau wanted to call him Greg Sestero, the actor playing Mark, babyface, because he's shaved. That's the only reason the scene's in there. There's no reason. There's no story. It doesn't matter apart from that Tommy wanted to call him babyface.
Let's go eat, huh?
Danny, do you have anything else? do you have any problems? You can talk to me.
I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, so how's your sex life?
But the quotes are endless. It's an amazing film, and I think it's just a film that it's going to sound strange, but H. Bomber Guy covered it a little bit. There are some good lessons you can take from it, in that it's this nonsense that some people in positions of power, like Tommy in this case, the person who's telling the story and whose mindset it's from, can twist the narrative to make it seem like they're the ones being treated badly. Lisa's awful in the film. She just does things.
The main character in The Room is a unreliable narrator, but accidentally, as it were.
Lisa, she's terrible, but it's all just from Tommy's point of view. You know, she starts out the film saying what a great guy Tommy is, and then all of a sudden it's just, oh, I'm bored of him now. Let's go and date the best friend. It's just, you know, it's. I mean, at the same time, even if you didn't have that view of it, it's, you know, still enjoyable nonsense. Like the scene with Chris R, the mysterious Chris R, who shows up and
For some reason, he has the last name R. It's
yeah, they never know. And even Denny calls him Chris R as well. And he's like, "You got my money, right, Denny? Yeah, it's coming. It'll be here in 5 minutes."
It doesn't make any sense because Chris R never resurfaces. He appears in one scene and that's it.
Oh, don't you remember? They took him to jail, and as you know, if you just take someone to a police station, that's the end of it. You've been never seen again. And it takes them like takes them like 2 minutes as well to get all the way from the bottom of their flat to a police station and back. Like apparently the police just like they'll take you in and just like send you off to prison on someone's word. But like in the film, everyone loves Tommy too. Like the random shopkeeper who like just, oh, you're my favorite customer.
Oh, hey Tommy, I didn't see you.
Yep. Or the restaurant that he goes to with Mark, which the people, the barristers, the baristas, they just know Tommy and it's like, oh, hi Tommy, do you want your regular? Or the party where everyone's like, oh, Johnny's very sensitive, you mustn't hurt his feelings. And like the thing with his feud with Mark like is completely out of nothing, because Johnny, obviously Mark, and in some of he's like, oh, you know, when he's obviously cheating on John, cheating with, he's obviously a part of the affair, but Johnny and Mark are completely fine until the party when Mark and Lisa start like suggestively dancing in front of Johnny, and Johnny's like, Lisa, you're my future wife. What are you doing? And Mark's
He never
like,
says fiance. Have you noticed that?
Future wife. Yeah, just the most romantic term, of course. You know,
Yeah, he wasn't super well versed in English, so it might just be he didn't know the word.
But he got so much backing though, and he like.
Yeah, you'd think someone would have brought it up. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a weird person, so maybe he just ignored them.
I mean, he did write, produce, edit like the film, I guess. So
yeah.
But yeah, he Mark's like, maybe she's changed her mind about you, and then Mark's like, since when are you giving me orders? And like shoves him. And then all of a sudden it just breaks out into fighting, where it's like, I'm
firm with the word that's all against me. Why?
He says that, but he's like, Mark's like, oh, don't worry about it, man. And Johnny's like, don't touch me, motherfucker, get out. And they start like fighting. And then the psychologist, well, the psychologist, like replacement, the guy who just is introduced like seconds ago, so it's like screaming, "It's over! It's over!" He starts yelling it out as loud as he can for no reason. Like, it's over. It's just nonsense. Get out! Get out! Get out of my life! When he records the phone conversations on a tape recorder, but there's no, like, the cassette apparently has endless tape because he just leaves it there like for days.
Oh yeah. It's on like an old ass like 80s deck too. It would not have nearly that much.
Yeah, and he doesn't even like, it just presses play and it's instantly at like the conversation that's just happened. Like there's no like rewinding or anything.
Also, when he's attaching it to the phone, he clearly doesn't actually have because you can't connect one to a phone like that. But he just like kind of just like messes with the wires for a bit and then just sets it down and walks away. It's like it's not connected in any way. Like what?
Yeah, and it's like crisp, clear audio as well. Like there's no way like some horrible like 80s rubbishy like kiddie recorder is going to have like the audio that's literally been lifted from the microphones he's used.
A good microphone too, because he splurged on the equipment for it.
Yeah, it's and the even the stuff that's not even that related to the film. Like they had a billboard of the film up for like a decade, just one billboard on like a motorway somewhere, just of the room, just up for a decade, which must have cost them so much to like hire out the whole thing. and just the like. I mean, I guess it's sort of it's all right now because Tommy's like a cult hero. And the fact that like no one cared about the set because there's like framed pictures of spoons just on the walls, which like the bit where he trashes his apartment as well. Why, Lisa? Why? And there's a scene of him just like screaming with a camera sort of panning around the room, and he's just going, you're a bitch, and like throwing bits of fruit over and stuff. Yeah, it's honestly, it's my favorite. I'm
It's
sorry,
not true. I didn't hit her. I didn't hit her. It was a lie. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Gosh, and the scene where like I know it's a rooftop scene with Mark where he's on the rooftop with the initial psychologist, and from nothing the psychologist is like,
He starts like to try to kill him. He almost throws him off the building.
The psychologist is like, oh, you're having an affair, aren't you? Just from like no evidence. He just deduces this.
Because he's a psychologist, apparently.
Like,
his name is Peter, isn't it?
Yeah, Peter the psychologist. And then Mark's like, what? And then like it cuts to really dramatic music and it's a shot from like below the balcony and he's like doing this with him and sort of shaking him a bit and doing like fake clenching his teeth like and then there's like a pause and they stop and it's like, sorry.
Oh, hi, Mark apparently took 60 takes to get it right, and that's the final take.
They had to like ADR the lines as well.
The
like,
best part of that, the oh hi Mark one thing is the one that they actually went with was one of the pretty early ones too. So he did 60 takes and many ADR versions of it just for them to pick one. He was not happy with any of them, so they picked one that was actually kind of early in the takes. It just hilarious to me how people had to sit through it's hilarious in a morbid way where people had to sit through so much just for him to be like, actually this one's fine.
Yeah.
Although he wasn't, obviously, he was still very piggy about it, but yeah.
Yeah. And the even the less notable scenes, like there's a scene where like Johnny's telling us about how he met Lisa, and he's like, well, that's a very interesting story, Mark. I met her at a festival. He's like, and at one point just that, like the whole scene, he goes like that, like just making noises, like, oh gosh.
The drug dealer scene is something else. With Mark, and it's just not Mark, the kid. It's just I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah, it is.
What were you doing to him? Giving him, selling him? Stop ganging up on me!
It's just so.
You know my fucking mother. You listen to me. Pointing, she like grabs his like collar.
He does a whiny kid really well, actually.
Oh gosh,
he does sound like an asshole kid where he's just like whining constantly.
Yeah, and the when Johnny gets back, he's like, you know better, right? Why? And like Lisa, despite the fact Lisa's like sort of said at this point already that she doesn't like Johnny, she's like, oh, you know Johnny loves you, right? Johnny's like, let's go.
I just came back from the doctor. I definitely had cancer. Oh, come on, Mom. They're curing cancer every day.
That doesn't care. Never brought up again. And like the mum keeps bringing up like all these new things. Like, well, at least your life's interesting. I did nothing in my days. My husband took half the money. Never get married. I mean, she says like men are rubbish or something, but she's also trying to get her daughter to marry Johnny.
Also, like, her main plot point never pays off, where they're constantly reinforcing that she has cancer, and you think that something's going to happen with it, and nothing ever comes of it. She literally just keeps saying, "Oh, well, I'm dying of cancer," and it's like nothing happens. By the end of the film, she's still alive and fine, as far as we can tell. Like, it's such a weird plot point. Like, you think it's going somewhere, and it just drops.
It's the world of Johnny. Only Johnny matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But also the what's it called? the friend, I can't remember his name, but like it's a friend who like sneaks into the apartment to have sex because apparently
Oh
that's
yeah, that scene is very awkward.
and they get caught, and then he like pulls out. He tries to take his underwear back because somehow he got changed like without putting his underwear on. I don't know how like you would have covered because like she Lisa and her mum come back in and they like quickly pull their pants back up and stuff, or the man pulls his pants back up, trousers I guess, but he pulls up his trousers but has his underwear off and then goes back in to get his underwear, which he pulls out from like the thing. Like the mother grabs it off him and is like, what's this? And then like later on he's explaining to Johnny and stuff, Johnny and actually, no, it's just Johnny. He's like, I've had a bit of a tragedy. the tragedy is that he got caught with his in obviously in the apartment, and then Johnny tries to get him to tell Denny and Mark, who show up later. He's like, oh, I had a problem with me underwears, and Mark goes, oh, underwear? What? But when he's saying that, he like shoves him over. He pushes the guy over. And like it's meant to be like he fell, but he clearly Mark clearly just shoves him over. And he's like, oh, we got to take him to the hospital. He like walks off the set because he's injured. Oh gosh, it's the best film. It's really just like I've got a copy of it. It's amazing. Like,
oh, it is good.
We should probably just have a watch party where we all watch the room together or something like that. Especially for me, who I haven't watched it. I haven't seen it actually.
I think anyone who's interested in like filmmaking or anything like that should definitely watch it. Just not even from like the common thing that's brought up where it's like, oh, you need to know how not to do things, but even just because there is like a lot of really interesting things you can extrapolate from it. Like one of the most important things is to not, even if you're doing a story about yourself, to not like have the entire thing just like dead eye on your view. Like you need to have other perspectives in it because it is literally a entire feature-length movie of Tommy Wiseau's view on a specific situation, and no one else's view is expressed. It's literally his. Even other scenes with him not in it are scenes you can clearly tell he thinks that's how people talk when he's not there. It's hilarious.
Like in the party, like right at the start, there's just two random guests we never see again, and we're like,
there's a lot of useless characters in the room.
Yeah.
So it's such a, despite being a pretty short movie, it's extremely uneconomical with its time.
Yeah.
So much to be done to have developed the characters. So they just cut out a lot of extraneous crap.
And with like 15
scenes that go nowhere.
With like 15 or 20 minutes of a movie left, he's like, I have an announcement to make. We're expecting, and then Lisa just made it up to be interesting. Because that's something people do, like
definitely.
And the friends are like, I really think you should tell Johnny. He's like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I've been like talking for 1 minute. And on a slightly somber note, it's getting quite late, and we've been going for 2 hours.
No.
So I'd like to. Sorry, Lapis.
Are we going to have to bid adieu?
Just for now.
Yeah, just for now. We'll do another one of these another time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you all on, and Wolf before he left prematurely. It's been a hopefully entertaining and interesting conversation with politics and plenty of conversation about the room. And yeah, I hope everyone who watched enjoyed the stream. Definitely go and follow and subscribe to Lapis and Geek and Amelia. And Wolf. I'll put their relative Twitters and YouTubes and stuff in the description. Yeah, thanks, Geek. I almost forgot there. But yeah, it's well into the night in the UK, so I am going to go to bed. I hope everyone has a lovely evening. And yeah, be left wing. That's the moral of the day.
And as Garrett would say, goodbye, comrades and potential comrades.
No.